Satyamev Jayate. In this video, we are going to work on a very specific topic called as the Trans-Himalayas. So let's get started. So as you can see, this is our Indian subcontinent, and you are familiar with the two structures, that is the Himalayas and the Tropic of Cancer. Now this part will come again and again when we are discussing different ranges in Trans-Himalayas. Okay, this is because I want you to memorize a very difficult concept that the Himalayas are comprised of many different ranges. Okay, so that's the Himalayas. Now essentially the Himalayas is basically divided into four parts: the Trans-Himalayas, the Great Himalayas, the Mid-Himalayas, and finally the Outer Himalayas. There is one more range called as the Northeastern Himalayas, which we will deal later. Okay, for the time being, there are four Himalayas, right? Trans, Great, Mid, and Outer. Easy. And this is how it looks like. Okay, Trans, Great, Mid, and Outer Himalayas. At this point, we are only interested in the Trans-Himalayas. Okay, so this is how the Trans-Himalayas look like. Okay, this is how the Trans-Himalayas look like. So the Trans-Himalayas basically extend from Afghanistan. It goes down to Pakistan, India, and finally it reaches China. Okay, so it's something like this line, right? So this is the Trans-Himalayas. Now the question comes, why this part of Himalayas is known as the Trans-Himalayas? Trans basically means something beyond normal, something away from the normal. So why this Himalayas is away from the normal? Let me teach you why. So let us go back, or let's say this is our current era. Okay, and in this current map of ours, you can see some of the fold mountains. Okay, if you are not familiar with the fold mountains, there is a excellent video that explains what are the fold mountains. Okay, so as you can see, that is India, right? You can see the Asia and India, and you have the few pointy structure, that is the Himalayas. Similarly, if you look into South America, those are the Andes mountain. And finally, we have the Rockies mountain in North America. So essentially, these all are the fold mountains. Now the question is how the Himalayas were formed. Okay, now we have dealt with how Himalayas were formed. We are going to look into this part in another perspective to understand why the Trans-Himalayas is known as the beyond Himalayas or away from the normal Himalayas. So let's explore that. So this is the current era, and this is 250 million years ago. We have traveled back a lot into time, 250 million years ago. So as you can see, the whole of the continents is merged in form of a puzzle, right? As you can see, this is some sort of a puzzle. And this superstructure is known as Pangaea. And the entire ocean around it is known as Panthalassa. Okay, that is Pangaea and Panthalassa. Now, around 210 million years ago, Pangaea split into Laurasia and Gondwana. Okay, this is something we have learned earlier, but for the time being, I'm just teaching you this to make you understand why Trans-Himalayas is different from the rest of the Himalayas. And you can also see India. Now, India is going to break apart from Gondwana. Okay, India is now going to slowly break apart from Gondwana. Now, India is slowly moving towards the Eurasian plate. Okay, it's slowly moving, it's moving, okay, and it's moving. It's a slow process that will take million years, so it's a slow process, just bear with it. So as you can see, India has almost reached parts of Eurasia, and it's in now the Tethys Sea and is going to collide with Eurasia. Okay, it's going to collide with Eurasia, awesome, and it has collided, causing the formation of the Himalayas. Okay, the Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate to form the Himalayas. Easy? Okay, now there is an important thing that you have to understand. Okay, let me just close in Eurasia and India. So this is once again moments before the collision. Okay, so as you can see, there is already a mountain present in Eurasia. Okay, as you can see, there is already a mountain present. And this region is known as Trans-Himalaya. Okay, this Himalaya is already Trans-Himalaya. So basically what I'm trying to say, even before the collision, there was some hill or some mountain range that was already present. Now, after the collision, this mountain range actually became bigger. So what I'm trying to say is that even before the formation of Himalayas, even before the collision, the Trans-Himalayas was already present, or at least a part of the Trans-Himalayas was already present. Okay, so now India is going to collide, okay, and we have the Himalayas and the Trans-Himalayas, and slowly they grew in height. Okay, so that is why the Trans-Himalayas are considered a bit different from the rest of the Himalayas, because they were already there before the collision, right? So let's explore more things. So this is the Trans-Himalayas, okay? And to give you perspective how it looks like, so let me just change the screen. Okay, so this is how it looks like, okay? So as you can see, the places marked in green belongs to Pakistan, illegally occupied by Pakistan. Then those marked in red is illegally occupied by China. Siachen is occupied by China. Gilgit-Baltistan is illegally occupied by Pakistan. And as you can see, all those mountains are known as the Trans-Himalayas. Now in Gilgit-Baltistan, you can find a very lone mountain system called as Nanga Parvat. Now this is also part of the Trans-Himalayas, essentially part of the Zaskar range, which is part of Trans-Himalayas, right? Very easy concept to understand. Just assume Nanga Parvat is part of Trans-Himalayas, and Trans-Himalayas has several ranges. One of them is Zaskar range, and Nanga Parvat happens to be the continuation of Zaskar range, right? So that's Nanga Parvat, okay, and that's the entire Trans-Himalayas, okay? So this is the entire Trans-Himalayas, right? Now to give a bigger perspective, okay, bigger perspective, this is how it looks like, okay? As you can see, the Indus River, okay, the Indus River flows in between the Trans-Himalayas, okay? So the question is, from where the Trans-Himalayas extend? So what is the extreme point of the Trans-Himalayas? A very good question. What is the northmost extreme of Trans-Himalayas? What is the southmost extreme of the Trans-Himalayas? What is the westmost extreme of Trans-Himalayas? And finally, what is the easternmost extreme of Trans-Himalayas? Okay, so let us go back once again into this map. Okay, so as you can see, there is a place called as the Wakhan Corridor, which happens to be in between Pakistan and Tajikistan. Okay, Wakhan Corridor. It's in Afghanistan. It's between Tajikistan and Pakistan, or let's say Gilgit-Baltistan, right? So the Trans-Himalayas starts basically from the Wakhan Corridor. Okay, Wakhan Corridor is the place where the Trans-Himalayas start. So technically, the Trans-Himalayas start, or the northmost extreme part of the Trans-Himalayas is in Afghanistan, or Wakhan Corridor. Okay, a very easy concept to understand. Now, as it happens, the westernmost part is also in Afghanistan, or let's say Wakhan Corridor. Okay, technically Wakhan Corridor. The western part and the northern part is in Afghanistan of Trans-Himalayas. Okay, now let's understand where is the easternmost part and the southernmost part. Okay, so as you can see, that's the whole of Trans-Himalayas. And there is something called as the Kailash range. Can you see the Kailash range? Yeah, Kailash range. So Kailash range is also an extension of the Trans-Himalayas, right? So the Kailash range, since it is an extension of the Trans-Himalayas, the southernmost extreme, as you can see, Kailash range is almost the southernmost extreme of the Trans-Himalayas. And that is why it is located in Tibet, which happens to be in China. Okay, so let me just give you a better perspective. Okay, you have the northernmost extreme, okay, the northernmost extreme in Afghanistan. You have the westernmost extreme in Afghanistan, okay, and you have the easternmost extreme of the Trans-Himalayas, that is the Kailash range in Tibet, China. Okay, so as you can see, this is almost the most correct map you can see about the Trans-Himalayas. You can see a lone mountain called as the Nanga Parvat, okay, which happens to be part of the Zaskar range. You will understand that in the later sections of the video when we talk about the Zaskar range. Now I do repeat, I will keep repeating a certain section of the video again and again so that you will understand the categorization of the ranges, right? So you have the Himalayas, the Trans-Himalayas. Now let's see the distribution of the Trans-Himalayas. So this is how the Trans-Himalaya looks like. You have first the Karakoram range, the second the Ladakh range, third the Zaskar range, and finally the Kailash range. So the Trans-Himalayas is divided into the Karakoram range, Ladakh range, Zaskar range, and the Kailash range. So these are the ones. Now we are going to individually discuss each of these ranges, right? Let's start with the Karakoram range. In this topic, we are going to discuss about Karakoram range. So let's get started. As you can see, this is the map of the Indian subcontinent. You have the Tropic of Cancer passing through it, passing through middle of India. And you have seen the structure called as Himalayas. Now this part comes again and again because I want to make sure that you understand there is a division of Himalayas, right? For every subsect of Himalayas, I will be talking about this part again and again. Now, of course, you can skip this part forward, right? So as you can see, you have the Himalayas. Now you have a confusion or misinformation that Himalayas are essentially a monolith. It basically means Himalayas are just one structure, which is not true. Himalayas is divided into 4 parts. Okay, you have the Trans-Himalayas, that's the first one. You have the Great Himalayas, that's the second one. You have the Mid-Himalayas, the third one, and the fourth one, that is the Outer Himalayas. There is another set of Himalayas called as the Northeast Himalayas, which we will deal later, but essentially these are the 4 ranges of Himalayas that we are interested in, because these ranges were created according to the chronological order. The Trans-Himalayas were created the first, second the Great Himalayas, third the Mid-Himalayas, and later the smallest Himalayas, the Outer Himalayas, were created the last. Okay, so this is arranged according to the chronological order. We are interested in the Trans-Himalayas, right? So as you can see, this monolith has been divided into 4 parts. Okay, let me just show you again. Okay, so that's Himalayas. Okay, the entire stretch of Himalayas you see as a complete monolith. Now it has been divided into 4 parts. Okay, and these are the 4 parts. At the very top you have the Trans-Himalayas. Then you have the Great Himalayas. Okay, in Great Himalayas you have the Mount Everest and all those stuff. Then you have the Mid-Himalayas and the Outer Himalayas. The Trans-Himalayas were created first, right? This is something that we have discussed way earlier, right? So we are going to focus on the Trans-Himalayas, okay? The one at the top, the Trans-Himalayas. So essentially, this is the Trans-Himalayas, okay? As you can see, this is the Trans-Himalayas. Let me just go back and show you. At the very top, you have the white color mountains, that is the Trans-Himalayas. And we have just enlarged this image. Okay, this is essentially the Trans-Himalayas, the whole set of Trans-Himalayas, right? Now we want to divide Trans-Himalayas further. Okay, first we divided Himalayas, now we have to divide Trans-Himalayas also. So Himalayas, Trans-Himalayas, Great Himalayas, Mid-Himalayas, Outer Himalayas. Now if we divide Trans-Himalayas, you have the first one, the northern one, that is the Karakoram range. The second one is the Ladakh range. The third one is the Zaskar range, and the fourth one is the Kailash range. Okay, Karakoram, Ladakh, Zaskar, and Kailash range. So we are essentially interested in the Karakoram range. Okay, to make you or to give you a perspective. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Okay, you have the Himalayas once again, Trans, Great, Mid, and Outer. I know I'm repeating it again and again, but this is very essential because you will keep on forgetting about the division of Himalayas, the 4 Himalayas, right? The 4 ranges. Now at the top you have the Trans-Himalayas, and Trans-Himalayas also has 4 ranges: the Karakoram range, the Ladakh range, the Zaskar range, and finally the Kailash range, right? We are only interested in this part, the Karakoram range, right? The Karakoram range is part of Trans-Himalayas, which is part of Himalayas, right? I think you have got a perspective. Now remember this, when I am explaining Ladakh range, Zaskar range, and Kailash range, I will be showing this section again to make you just repeat, to make you understand again and again, so that it gets embedded in your skull, because this is very essential, right? Okay, so let's focus on the first range, that is the Karakoram range. Okay, so we are going to talk about the Karakoram range, and okay, so you have the Trans-Himalayas. And as you can see, it basically covers parts of China. Okay, then you have India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. These are the 4 countries where you can find the Trans-Himalayas, right? 4 countries are China, India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The 4 countries where you can find the Trans-Himalayas. Now, we are only interested in the Karakoram range. So, we are going to split it. As you can see, these ranges has been split. The Trans-Himalayas has been split into 4 parts. The very first part is the Karakoram range. Then you have the Ladakh range. Then you have the Zaskar range, and then you have the Kailash range. Karakoram is at the top. Then in the mid you have the Ladakh range. Then you have the Zaskar range. And then you have the Kailash range. All 4. Okay, that's how the division of Trans-Himalayas is done. Now we are only interested in this part, that is the Karakoram range. So let's remove all of them. Okay, so this is the Karakoram range, the northernmost part of the Trans-Himalayas. As it happens, the Trans-Himalayas is the northern parts of Himalaya. So essentially, the Karakoram range is the most northern part of Himalaya. Okay, let me repeat it again. You have the Himalayas, and the northern part of Himalayas is the Trans-Himalayas. The northern part of Trans-Himalayas is the Karakoram range. So essentially, the Karakoram range is the most northern part of the entire Himalayas. How awesome is that? Now, Karakoram range is essentially also known as the backbone of High Asia. We won't discuss why it is called as the backbone of High Asia. Just understand it's known as the backbone of High Asia. That's all. Done. Okay. Backbone of High Asia. That's a nomenclature or name given to the Karakoram range. Moving on. Now, we should understand a few more things. As you can see, you have or you may have heard about K2. Okay, K2 or Godwin Austen. So K2 is essentially the second highest peak in the entire world. You obviously are familiar with the highest peak, that is Mount Everest. Okay, the second highest peak is K2. K2 is located on this particular range. This particular mountain is located on the Karakoram range. Okay, now there is a confusion. Where is K2 located? NCERT books mentions K2 is located in India. Now, if we go deep into the maps, you will understand K2 is not part of India. Let's understand. Okay, so this is the whole map of the northern part of the subcontinent. You have China. Okay, that's China. You have India. You have Pakistan. You have Afghanistan. And at the top, you have Tajikistan, right? Let's understand one more important thing, okay? I'm going to focus limelight on Afghanistan, okay? So your question is, why Afghanistan? It's important. There is a small structure or essentially a corridor between Tajikistan and Pakistan, which is essentially a part of Afghanistan, okay? A small structure that goes, okay, as you can see, a small structure, a neck-like structure. So what is this neck-like structure called as? This structure is known as the Wakhan corridor, okay, the Wakhan corridor. It's between Pakistan and Tajikistan, essentially part of Afghanistan. A very important substructure, right? This is essential to understand, right? Now let's understand that India, the current map of India that is shown in our textbooks, is not essentially right. There are parts of Kashmir which is with China. There are parts of Kashmir which is with Pakistan, which is known as Pakistan occupied Kashmir, right? So this is how it looks like. Okay, essentially the one in red, Aksai Chin, is with China. In green is Gilgit-Baltistan, which is located in Pakistan, right? It's not in India. Indian authorities don't have access or administration in Gilgit-Baltistan or Aksai chain. Pakistan controls Gilgit-Baltistan. Aksai chain is controlled by China. It's sad, but that's the truth. So essentially, Gilgit-Baltistan is part of Pakistan, right? So the question is, where does the Karakoram range lie? Okay, what is the extent of the Karakoram range? As you can see, this is the Karakoram range. Okay, the southern part of the Karakoram range, as you can see, lies in Aksai chain, right? Then there is a small part that is located in India. The major part is located in Pakistan, in Gilgit-Baltistan. The northern point is located in Afghanistan, that is called as the Wakhan corridor. Let me repeat it again. The southern part is located in Aksai chain, right, which is part of China. There is a small part which is located in India. There's a small part, there's a big part which is located in Gilgit-Baltistan. And essentially, the tip or the northern part is located in Wakhan corridor. Essentially, our Himalayas start from Afghanistan, right? That's Wakhan corridor. Okay, so I hope this ease your confusion where the Karakoram range lie. Okay, now there is an important thing that we have to discuss. Okay, as you can see, there is a small part called as the Pamir knot. Now we have discussed about Pamir knot in our earlier lecture. So as you can see, this is Pamir knot, and Pamir knot is that place where several mountain ranges come and converge. If you remember, the Pamir knot was that place where the Tian Shan mountain, the Kunlun mountain, the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush mountain, and many other small mountains converge at that point. Pamir knot is located in Tajikistan and Afghanistan. Okay, as you can see, Karakoram range is essentially going to collide with Pamir knot or going to converge into Pamir knot. That's a very important fact that you have to know, right? Pamir knot. Now let's move on. Okay, so we have essentially discussed where the Karakoram range lies. Okay, Pakistan, India and China, major part in Gilgit-Baltistan, which is in Pakistan, right? So there are many peaks. Okay, essentially the Karakoram range is a set of a lot of mountains. Among these mountains, there are like 4 or 5 mountains whose height exceeds 8,000 meters. There are 4 mountains. Okay, essentially there are 18 mountains which exceeds 7,500 meters, and out of these mountain ranges, out of these mountains, there are around 4 of them which exceeds 8,000 meters. Okay, so as you can see, these are the 4 mountains. This is almost the exact locations of these mountains. The first one in golden is K2. Okay, the second one is Broad Peak. The third one is Glacier Brum, and the fourth one is also Glacier Brum, that is 1 and 2. There are 4 or 5 Glacier Brum mountains. I'm not that expert on these mountains, but there are many of them which is named after, which is named as 1, 2, 3, 4 and on. Okay, essentially K2 is the tallest one. The tallest one in the entire world is Mount Everest. The second tallest is K2, right? So what's so special about K2? Now K2 we have to discuss in detail. This is because K2 is mentioned in NCERT. K2 is also the second highest mountain range, second tallest or second highest mountain range. The height of K2 is 8,611 meters, almost 8.6 kilometers. It's very difficult to climb. K2 is like the toughest mountain to climb. The fatality rates are significantly high. We will discuss that. Okay, so as you can see, K2 is located in parts of Pakistan. Essentially, it's located on the boundary of India, Pakistan and China. But if you analyze further, if you go in deep, you will realize it's actually located in Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan, right? India, though, however, claims that K2 is ours. So K2 has a lot of names, okay? It's known as Godwin Austen. So this guy is Godwin Austen. This guy did a lot of mapping work around this area, and that's why this mountain is called as Godwin Austen, right? Remember that this guy didn't successfully climb to the top or the peak of K2. He actually went around the whole area and mapped the whole area. There were two other guys who actually were the one who scaled K2, okay? So there are other names called as the Savage Mountain, Mount Godwin Austen and Chogon and something, okay? We are only interested in Godwin Austen and K2. Now this mountain range is quite steep. For example, this is Mount Everest, okay? This is Mount Everest, and as you can see, the slopes are still can be climbed, okay? As you can see, the slopes can be climbed. This is K2, okay? Because of the angle, it's very difficult to climb. This is Mount Everest, this is K2. Okay, so this is a challenge to climb K2, right? Now, as you can see, there were two gentlemen who actually climbed K2, and their names are actually Compagoni and Lino Ladisi. We are not interested, but for the sake, I've just added this information, right? Achille and Lino, okay? These are actually from Italy. These two gentlemen scaled K2 first. Now, let's talk about how difficult is this to climb, okay? As you can see, this is the list of K2 and Mount Everest. Out of 700, okay, 700, there were 96 deaths, okay? 700 people tried to scale K2, but however, 96 people died. In case of Everest, 11,341 people tried to scale Mount Everest. However, the death rate is only around 330 people died. If you take the percentage, the fatality rate is 13.7% in K2. However, Everest, despite being the tallest structure in the entire world, the death rate is only around 3%. There's a significant mismatch between the death rate or the fatality rates in K2 as well as Everest. So the point being, if you try to scale K2, you have a chance of 13.7% that you are going to die. However, if you try to climb Mount Everest, only there is a chance that 3% that you are going to die. I hope you go for Mount Everest. All right, moving on. Now we are going to look into the length of the Karakoram range. Essentially, as you can see, it's around 500 kilometers. Okay, it starts from the southern end, that is Siachen in China. It goes through India, okay, parts of Ladakh and all, and then reaches Gilgit-Baltistan, and at the very top, it reaches the Wakhan corridor in Afghanistan. That's the northernmost point. Essentially, we are going to now discuss about the glaciers located on the Karakoram range. So your question is, what is a glacier? So imagine this, you have a mountain and you just wrap ice around it. That's glacier. In simple terms, that's glacier. There's a mountain and you wrap ice around it, that's glacier. Okay. So when this ice melt, it becomes river. That's all you have to understand. For the time's sake, we are just going to focus on the glaciers that are located on the Karakoram range. Now you should understand that most of the glaciers, okay, the megastructures glaciers are located in the polar regions, Arctic and Antarctica, right? However, there are glaciers which are significant in size that are located in Himalayas and many other mountain structures of the world. Siachen Glacier is one of the most important glaciers. Along with it, you have Biafo Glacier, Hispar Glacier and Baltoro Glaciers. These all glaciers are located in the Karakoram range. right? So let's start with the Siachen Glacier. So this is Siachen Glacier. Okay, I have removed all the other glacier. Siachen Glacier is the longest glacier in Himalayas. Remember that it's the longest glacier in Himalayas. And also remember, okay, it is one of the highest battlefields in the world. You keep learning about Siachen glaciers a lot, okay, in the news. Now, there are military outposts of both India and Pakistan. As per for the geography, we are only going to discuss about the geography, not the politics involved in it. So this is the Siachen Glacier. Okay, as you can see, it's pretty much in shape of a triangle. Okay, it's shape of a triangle. Now there is a very important information that you have to know. Okay, you have already seen the map of India. India, the northernmost part of India is known as Indra Col. Okay, and this is where Indra Col is located, somewhat to the north of Siachen Glacier. This is that part where the Indian government or Indian authorities can exert its influence. Okay, Indra Col is the limit, the northern extreme of India. Indra Col. So this, if you have learned a little bit of geography, is located around 37.6 degree north. Okay, 37.6 degree north, that's the most extreme northernmost point of India. Okay, beyond this, it's Pakistan and China. This is the extreme where India can exert its influence. 37.6 degree north, Indra Col. And it's located almost at the top of Siachen Glacier. Okay, and Indra Col is also that point where there is a tri-junction. You have India, you have China here, and you have Pakistan here. Right? Now, to explain you better, let's see in a different perspective. The red triangle, that's Siachen Glacier. And as you can see, it's pretty much in India. Some parts is in China and some parts is in Gilgit-Baltistan, that is Pakistan. Right? So that's Siachen Glacier. Now we are going to discuss about other three glaciers. One is Biafo Glacier, the Hispar Glacier and Baltoro Glacier. Only the Siachen Glacier is located in India. Biafo Glacier is located in Pakistan. Hispar Glacier is also located in Pakistan. Baltoro Glacier is also located in Pakistan. Let's have a look at Biafo Glacier. So this is Biafo Glacier, right? And it's considered as the world's third largest glacier, non-polar glacier. As I mentioned, there are glaciers in the polar parts, Arctic and Antarctic. There are big glaciers in Arctic as well as Antarctic. But Biafo is world's third largest glacier. Second is Siachen. First is a glacier that is located in Tajikistan. Second is Siachen. Third is Biafo. Second and third non-polar largest glacier is both located in Karakoram range. Interesting, right? All right, so that's Biafo Glacier, right? So let's have a look into the location. Okay, so that's Siachen and that's Biafo Glacier. Okay, that round is Biafo Glacier. Next, have a look into the Hispar Glacier. So that's Hispar Glacier. Okay, it's located in Gilgit-Baltistan. As you can see, it's located in Gilgit-Baltistan. Next, we have one more glacier, that is Baltoro Glacier, and this is the most northern glacier in Karakoram range, Baltoro Glacier. So this is also located in Gilgit-Baltistan. Okay, so essentially that's pretty much about the glaciers. Now, the Karakoram range has two rivers that joins from above, from Tibet. One is the Karakraks and the second one is Yarkant. Now these two rivers are in Tibet. It doesn't interest the UPSC examiner because it's in Tibet, that's all. Okay, but for the time's sake, for the convenience sake, I just mentioned it as there are two rivers, that is Karakraks and Yarkant river. Okay, if it comes, then just add. You will know that these two rivers come from Tibet and it's in the northern part of Karakoram range, right? So what's next? Now we are going to learn about the passes. As you can see, this is the Karakoram Pass. Okay, and it's located almost in Siachen Glacier. As you can see, it's marked in red triangle. Siachen Glacier, Karakoram Range, Karakoram Pass. So this is how the entire setup looks like. You have K2, you have Indrakol, you have Karakoram Pass, you have Siachen Glacier, you have Biofo Glacier, you have Hispar Glacier, and you have Baltoro Glacier. All the glaciers, all the most important peak, and Indrakol. In this topic, we are going to discuss about the Ladakh range. So let's get started. As you can see in front of you, you have the Indian subcontinent. You have the structures that you know of, that is the Himalayas and the Tropic of Cancer. Now this part is something that I'm going to repeat before we talk about any range. So you can just skip this part if you have, learned about this, but I'm going to repeat this before the start of any range because this is pretty important, right? So you have the Himalayas and you have the Tropic of Cancer. Now, you should know that the Himalayas is not just one single person. It is comprised of many different persons. Okay, so this is the Himalayas. It is not just one single person, but it is comprised of many different ranges. So this is how it looks like. The Himalayas is considered to be part of 4 or 5 different ranges. Technically, we are going to focus on these 4. The Trans-Himalayas, the Great Himalayas range, the Mid-Himalayas, and the Outer Himalayas. Right? Essentially, we are discussing about the Trans-Himalayas. Okay, so as you can see, this is the division of the Himalayas. The very top you have the Trans-Himalayas, then you have the Great Himalayas, the Mid-Himalayas, and the Outer Himalayas. Okay, since we are going to discuss on, we have the discussion on the Trans-Himalayas, so this is the Trans-Himalayas. Right, we already know that the Trans-Himalayas goes from Afghanistan to parts of China, India, and Pakistan. Right. Now you should know that the Trans-Himalayas is itself divided into 4 parts. Okay, so this is a bit confusing. That is why I keep on repeating this part so that it gets stuck in your skull. Right. So the Trans-Himalayas is divided into 4 parts. That is the Karakoram range, the Ladakh range, the Zaskar range, and the 4th, the Kailash range. So this is how it looks like. The Himalayas division, okay, Trans, Great, Mid, Outer, and this is the entirety of the division. Okay, so as you can see, this is how it looks like. The Himalayas is divided into 4 parts. The Trans-Himalayas is also divided into 4 parts. Okay, we are interested at this point in the Ladakh range. Okay, Himalayas is divided into Trans, Great, Mid, Outer Himalayas, out of which the Trans-Himalayas is divided into Karakoram, Ladakh, Zaskar, and the Kailash range. We are interested in the Ladakh range. Okay, so let's have a discussion on the Ladakh range, right? So once again, this is the Trans-Himalayas. The Trans-Himalayas goes around from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and China, right? Now, let's have a look into the, the division of the Trans-Himalayas. So this is how it looks like. The Trans-Himalayas is divided into Karakoram range, the Ladakh range, the Zaskar range, and the Kailash range. We have learned about the Karakoram range earlier, right? So let's only focus on the Ladakh range. Okay, so we have removed all other ranges. Now, as you can see, despite removing the Karakoram range and the Zaskar range, we have the Ladakh range and the Kailash range. Essentially, we are going to talk about the Ladakh range. It makes sense, the Ladakh range to be present here. So why the Kailash range is also present? Now, that's a beautiful question because the Kailash range also happens to be part of the Ladakh range. It's basically the same structure, same continuity. Essentially, the Kailash range is basically the tail of the Ladakh range, right? But we will have a detailed lecture on the Kailash range in the coming part, right? So that's the Ladakh range and that's the Kailash range. So the question is, what divides the Ladakh range from the Karakoram range and what divides the Ladakh range from the Zaskar range? So let's focus on some of the important things like rivers. So as you can see, there's a river called as the Shyok River, right? That's the Shyok River. And it acts as a boundary or a division between the Ladakh range and the Karakoram range. Shyok River is supported by its tributary called as the Nubra River. You should know that. Both of these rivers, that is the Shyok River as well as the Nubra River, rises from the Karakoram range. So this is how it looks like. Okay, so you have the Karakoram range. Okay, at the very top you have the Karakoram range. From the Karakoram range, the Shyok River as well as the Nubra River arises, and it basically splits the Karakoram range and the Ladakh range, right? Similarly, the Ladakh range and the Zaskar range is split by the Indus River. So this is the Indus River. Okay, as you can see, this huge big river is the Indus River, which comes out from the Kailash range. Okay, it's a bit confusing here and there, but once or twice of revision will help you understand this. Okay, from Kailash range, this river, that is the Indus River, rises, and this is how the division looks like. Okay, once again, the Shyok River, okay, with its tributary Nubra rises from the Karakoram range, and it splits the Trans-Himalayas in Ladakh as Ladakh range as well as the Karakoram range. The Indus River splits the Zaskar range and the Ladakh range. As you can see, the Shyok River, okay, empties its water into the Indus River, and Indus River goes into the Arabian Sea after traveling through Pakistan. Make sense, right? So now let's discuss what is the exact range of the Ladakh range. Okay, where can you find the Ladakh range? Okay, so once again you have the map of the parts of the Indian subcontinent, and as you can see, if you focus on parts of Kashmir, you can see the Aksai Chin is not with India. Okay, Aksai Chin right now is illegally occupied by China. Similarly, Gilgit-Baltistan is illegally occupied by Pakistan. So at this point, India does not have control over these regions, right? This is how it looks like. Okay, as you can see, the Ladakh range starts basically from Gilgit-Baltistan and pretty much ends in Aksai Chin, that is China. So essentially, Ladakh range covers 3 countries as for now, that is Gilgit-Baltistan in Pakistan, parts of India, and China. Aksai Chin in China. Now remember, 80% of the Ladakh range is in India. Okay, only some parts of the head is in Gilgit-Baltistan, and some part of it, that is the tails, is in Aksai Chin. However, if we were discussing about the Karakoram range, if you remember, majority of the Karakoram range was in Gilgit-Baltistan, right? So that's the Ladakh range. Now we are going to discuss few things such as, the passes. Okay, important passes. Now before we discuss about the passes, let's talk about the average height of the mountains in the Ladakh range. Now the average height of the mountains in Ladakh range is around 6,000 meters. Okay, now if we compare this to one of the tallest mountain in the Karakoram range, okay, so as you can see, this is the tallest mountain in Karakoram range, that is the K2 mountain, and its height is 8,611 meters, significantly higher than any mountain in the Ladakh range. K2 is located in Karakoram range, which we have learned in the earlier part of the video. Okay, if you just go through the Karakoram range, you will understand this. Okay, K2 is in Karakoram range. Okay, so K2, okay, is significantly taller than any average mountain in Ladakh range. Okay, and let's now discuss about few important facts on the passes. Now there are 3 important passes that you have to know of. One is the Chorbat Digarla, okay, the Chorbat Digarla. The second one is Kadungala Pass, and the third one is Changla Pass. Once again, the 3 important passes are the Chorbat Digarla Pass, the second one is the Kadungla Pass, and the third one is the Changla Pass. Okay, now let's understand the importance of these passes, okay, geographically as well as historically, and let's understand where the city of Leh is located. So as you can see, that's the Kardungla Pass, and the city of Leh is almost located adjacent to the Kardungla Pass. So this is where the city of Leh is located. Okay, and Kardungla Pass basically connected the ancient capital of Yarkand as well as the Changla Pass connected the ancient capital of Tibet. Okay, so these 2 regions historically was quite important in history. Yarkand as well as Tibet. Now, from Yarkand and Tibet, they reached Leh. Okay, from Yarkand and Tibet, they reached Leh through the Kardungla Pass as well as the Changla Pass. A very important thing that you have to know. Okay, so why this is important? So as it happens, Leh was an important trading center. Now remember this, the city of Leh lies in a very dry region. Dry region means it receives very small amount of rainfall. Now this is important to know because despite receiving very less rainfall, it meant that there was very less cultivation. Very less cultivation means very less economy, but still Leh managed to be a very prominent town in the medieval ages. This is only because Leh was adjacent to the Indus River and also next to the important passes such as the Kardungla Pass and the Changla Pass. So this is how the trade used to work. Okay, first, the people in Leh used to receive goods from Yarkand as well as Tibet. Okay, they used to receive goods from Yarkand as well as Tibet. Okay, so the still as well as in the earlier times as well as still now, the majority of the trade was done on yak. Okay, it's an animal, was done on yak. And this is how the trade caravans used to look like. Okay, the trade caravans used to come from these passes and enter into Leh. Okay, from Yarkand and Tibet, the city of Leh used to get many different things. These things include the pashmina wool. Okay, pashmina wool, which is quite good wool that comes from a goat. Okay, and then they used to have coral and silver. Okay, pashmina wool, coral and silver. And from Srinagar, Leh used to receive Indian spices. Okay, and some clothes. Okay, so Leh was a center where the goods from the Srinagar also come. Okay, and also the goods from Yarkand and Tibet used to come. So essentially, Leh prospered. So Leh used to be a very important town during the medieval ages, only because of its strategic location near to the Kardungla Pass as well as the Changla Pass. Right? So despite this, you should understand that since it was located to the passes, they were also attacked by many invaders. For example, the Mongols attacked Leh. Okay, the Mongols attacked Leh. The Tibetans also attacked Leh. Then the Dogras from the Indian part also attacked Leh. And furthermore, the Baltis also attacked Leh from these passes. So essentially, because of these passes, Leh prospered, but at the same time, they were also prone to invasions. Strategic location, but prone to invasions. Okay, now let's understand why Leh happened to be a dry place. Now, remember this, despite all the invasions, Leh still managed to be a Buddhist kingdom. Okay, it's because of the resilience of the people, they still managed to be Buddhist. A lot majority of them are still Buddhist. Okay, now let's understand why Leh is a dry place. So this is Leh, okay, Ladakh region and Leh, and as you can see, you can't find any water puddle or any source, any sign of moisture there. Okay, as you can see in the picture, there is no sign of moisture. For example, I am sweating a lot. Okay, you can't expect to be, full of humidity, or there is no moisture in that place. Okay, there is no rainfall in that place. Right? So the question is why Leh doesn't get moisture? So let's explore that. So as it happens, so as you can see, this is a tropical rainforest. These are those regions where the region receives the maximum amount of rainfall. Okay, these are those regions where they receive the maximum amount of rainfall, and this is how the process works. Okay, these regions are closer to the sea. From the sea, the clouds receive all the moisture, okay, and they bring all the moisture into these regions as rainfall. Okay, as you can see, it's bringing the rainfall. Right? Now the problem here is once they reach the Indian continent, the Indian subcontinent, they release all their moisture in form of rains. Okay, so parts of Kerala and Goa and the whole of Western Ghats receive the maximum amount of rainfall. Okay, but once they reach the Indian subcontinent, the parts of India, let's say Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Maharashtra, okay, all these regions, they slowly release all their moisture as rainfall. Now they reach parts of Himalayas. Okay, they reach parts of Himalayas. Okay, as you can see, they have reached parts of Himalayas. They bring abundant rainfall in parts of Himalayas, let's say Himachal Pradesh and the adjoining areas. But once they reach the Trans-Himalayas, these clouds don't have that kind of moisture. Okay, that's one reason. And the second reason that you have to understand is the Great Himalayas actually act as a barrier. The Great Himalayas are quite taller than the rest of the Himalayas. Most of the Himalayas. Okay, as you can see, compared to the Ladakh Himalayas, the Great Himalayas are significantly taller, and they actually prohibit these rains to reach the Ladakh Himalayas. Okay, so that is why the Ladakh Himalayas and the Zaskar Himalayas are, those regions are pretty much dry, right? In this topic, we are going to discuss about the Zaskar range. So let's get started. As you can see, this is the Indian subcontinent. And you already know the structures, that is the Tropic of Cancer and the Himalayas. Now, this is a part that I keep repeating, so you can just skip it forward. So Himalayas. As you can see, Himalayas, you see it as a monolith, a single structure. But Himalayas is composed of many different ranges. So this is how the Himalayas look like. You have the Trans-Himalayas, Great Himalayas, Mid-Himalayas and the Outer Himalayas. Let me show you. So this is the Trans-Himalayas, the Great Himalayas, the Mid-Himalayas and the Outer Himalayas. There is another range of Himalayas called as the Northeastern Himalayas, which we will discuss later. For the time being, let's say there are 4 ranges in Himalayas: Trans, Great, Mid and the Outer. Now, we are essentially interested in the Zaskar range. Zaskar range basically comes in Trans-Himalayas. So this is the Trans-Himalayas. Okay, if you have noticed, the Trans-Himalayas comes at the top, the northernmost Himalayas. Okay, the whole Kashmir region, basically the whole Kashmir Ladakh region essentially comes under Trans-Himalayas. Okay, Kashmir Ladakh region comes under Trans-Himalayas, Gilgit-Baltistan, all those regions. So this is the Trans-Himalayas. Okay, and it covers parts of Afghanistan, Pakistan, India and China. Right, so the Trans-Himalayas is itself divided into 4 parts. Okay, so this is the Trans-Himalayas and it is divided into 4 parts. The first is the Karakoram range, which we have done. The second is Ladakh range, which we also have covered. Third is the Zaskar range, which we are doing now. And finally, we will have the Kailash range. Right, so these are the ranges and these are the entirety of Himalayas. So let me show you how it works. Okay, so Himalayas has 4 divisions: the Trans, the Great, the Mid and the Outer Himalayas. We are interested at this point in Zaskar range. Okay, the Trans-Himalayas contains the Zaskar range. Right, so this is how it looks like. Okay, the Karakoram range, Ladakh range, Zaskar range and Kailash range. We are interested in the Zaskar range. Right, so this is the Himalayas. Let me just split the Trans-Himalayas into the 4 divisions. So as you can see, we have the Karakoram range, we have the Ladakh range, we have the Zaskar range and finally we have the Kailash range. Right, all the 4 ranges of Trans-Himalayas. Right, so let's focus only on the Zaskar range. Okay, so earlier we had learned that the Indus River splits the Zaskar range and the Ladakh range. Okay, so this is the Indus River. Oh, I'm sorry. The very first question that comes is, why there is a name called as Zaskar? What is the meaning of Zaskar? So essentially, Zaskar comes from the word Zangs. Zangs is the meaning of Zangs is essentially copper. It's a Tibetan word. Zangs is essentially a Tibetan word. It means copper. Now, copper deposits are found around these ranges. Okay, and you already know how copper is important or was important during the ancient times. If you don't know, just go through my lecture, you will understand. Okay, so copper was very essential, and the Tibetans probably used it. The name for copper is Zangs, and this range is known as Zaskar. Okay, so the question is, why split Zaskar and the Ladakh range? The Ladakh range and the Zaskar range is split by this river, that is the Indus River. Okay, as you can see, the Indus River basically splits Ladakh range as well as the Zaskar range. So this is the Ladakh range to give you a perspective. Okay, as you can see, the Indus River basically splits the Zaskar range and the Ladakh range. Okay, so in UPSC or any exam, it asks what is that river which splits the Ladakh range and the Zaskar range. The answer is the Indus River, right? So moving on. So this is a perspective where the Zaskar range lie. Okay, now if you're familiar with the Karakoram range and the Ladakh range, you should know that the Karakoram range essentially runs from Gilgit-Baltistan to parts of India and then to Aksai chain. Similarly, the Ladakh range also starts from Gilgit-Baltistan, goes through parts of India and then in Aksai chain. The Zaskar range, however, does not go into Gilgit-Baltistan. Its pretty much entirety is in India, almost 95%. Some parts it reaches in Aksai chain. Okay, some parts in Aksai chain. Okay, Zaskar range does not reach parts of Gilgit-Baltistan, but the Karakoram range and the Ladakh range does. Okay, so we have that. So what's next? So once again, this is the Indus River and the Zaskar range. So the most important mountain or the most prominent mountain in the Zaskar range is the Nankan mountain. Okay, the most prominent mountain in Zaskar range is the Nankan mountain. This is located somewhere here, right? Next, we have the passes. So as you can see, there are three major passes. Right now it's mentioning two. I will show you another pass later. So there are two main passes, actually three main passes. Right now we are discussing two. One is the Zojila Pass and the second one is Fotla Pass. These two passes basically act as a, a communication way between Kashmir and Ladakh. Okay, between Kashmir and Ladakh. So these passes were the way through which the people reach Kashmir from parts of Afghanistan or even from Tibet. Okay, so Zojila Pass and Fotla Pass are quite prominent. Now, if you want to learn more about the passes, there is a dedicated video about the passes itself in my channel. Okay, you can go through it. Okay, now let's learn about the third pass. So there is one more pass called as Barachala Pass. Now this pass is another prominent pass because it connects Ladakh to Lahore. Lahore is basically Himachal Pradesh. So it connects Ladakh and Lahore. Barachala Pass. So three important passes: Zojila Pass, Fotla Pass and the Barachala Pass. Zojila Pass and the Fotla Pass connects Ladakh to Kashmir. The Barachala Pass connects Ladakh to Lahore. Simple. Okay, moving on, let's talk about the rivers. There are two major important rivers. Okay, one is the Zaskar River and the second one is the Hanle River. Okay, Zaskar River and the Hanle River, and this is how it looks like. Okay, now there are some other rivers like the Suru River and the Kurna River, but I really can't find the way through which it goes through. So just I'm mentioning that if the question arises, is Kurna River or the Suru River is part of Zaskar range? Yes. Okay, remember there are four important rivers that rise: that the Kurna River, the Zaskar River, the Suru River and the Hanle River. Okay, so these are the most important rivers. However, I could not find, or we could not find, where the Kurna River or the Suru River rises or what's their direction. So I have just mentioned the Zaskar River and the Hanle River, right? So moving on. Okay, now the question is, why the Zaskar range is dry? Now this is something that we have discussed when talking about the Ladakh range, why Ladakh range is dry. Similarly, the same question is why the Zaskar range is dry. Now remember this is how the monsoon works. Basically, the clouds collect water from the ocean. A very simple way to say, okay? The clouds collect water from the ocean and it brings to parts of India. Okay, the very first people to receive the rain or the monsoons is the people in Kerala, then Goa, then Karnataka, Maharashtra, and so on. Okay, later slowly these clouds start moving towards the northern India. Okay, and they bring the rainfall to these parts, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, maybe parts of Rajasthan, and so on. Later they move towards the north. Okay, so when they move towards the north, they reach parts of Himalayas. Okay, now many parts of Himalaya do receive enough rainfall, but by the time these rains reach these parts, they are pretty much over with moisture. The moisture level considerably goes down. Okay, they are devoid of the moisture. Okay, and another important thing that you have to know is the Great Himalayas. The Great Himalayas are quite tall. Let me just show you a perspective. Okay, as you can see, the Great Himalayas are quite tall, and they prevent these moisture clouds, the clouds with moisture, to reach the Zaskar range. As you can see, these clouds with moisture are prevented to reach the Zaskar range and the Ladakh range, and that is why the Zaskar range and Ladakh range are, pretty much dry regions. They are cold but without any moisture. All right, moving on. So we are going to discuss some parts on the culture and heritage and history of Zaskar. Now remember this, Zaskar range is famous because they had found the deposits of copper. Okay, there are deposits of copper, and that's why the Bronze Age actually flourished here. Okay, there was something called as Bronze Age. Okay, there was human activity in the Bronze Age in the Zaskar range. Now later you should understand that Gautam Buddha, okay, the Siddhartha was born in Nepal, but Buddhism essentially started in parts of let's say Bihar and UP, in that area. Later it spreads to parts of India. Now Buddhism reaches Kashmir. From Kashmir through the passes, that is the Zojila Pass, they reach Leh and Ladakh, right? So even though Buddhism originated in Bihar, but the traces of Buddhism has vanished. However, Leh, Ladakh and that region is entirely Buddhist. Even Tibet still is Buddhist. Now, despite centuries of invasions from Afghanistan, parts of Pakistan, and from the Mongol invasion, the Buddhism has survived in the parts of Leh and Ladakh. Okay, and you should also understand, during the invasion of Tibet, the Chinese actually tried to finish off Buddhism. However, due to Indian government's secularism, the Buddhism still thrived in parts of Ladakh. Awesome, right? In this topic, we are going to work on a very specific range called as the Kailash range. So let's get started. So as you can see, this is the whole of the Indian subcontinent. This is the Tropic of Cancer that is passing through India. And at the top you can find the Himalayas. Now essentially, when you think about Himalayas, you think Himalayas as a superstructure, super single structure, or let's say a monolith. But Himalayas can be divided into 4 or 5 parts. Okay, as you can see, that's Himalayas. You see them as a very single structure, just one structure. But that's not true. Now remember this section I keep on repeating again. Now if you have been through this section, you can just skip forward, right? So as you can see, the Himalayas essentially is divided into 4 parts: the Trans-Himalayas, the Great Himalayas, the Mid-Himalayas, and the Outer Himalayas. We essentially are interested for the time being in the Trans-Himalayas. So this is how the Himalayas looks like. Okay, earlier it looks like this, right? A single structure, but it actually looks like this. On the top, the very northernmost, or at the north, we have the Trans-Himalayas. Then we have the Great Himalayas, we have the Mid-Himalayas, and then we have at the last the Outer Himalayas. There is something called as the Northeastern Himalayas also, but we will deal with that later. Essentially, now these are the 4 ones, important ones. Now, as you can see at the top, you have the Trans-Himalayas, right? So let's focus on the Trans-Himalayas. So this is the Trans-Himalayas, okay? And this type of Himalayas goes through the entirety of India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and pretty much parts of China. Essentially, that was Tibet. So Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and China. Trans-Himalayas are located essentially in these regions. Now, the interesting thing that you have to know is the Trans-Himalayas is itself divided into few parts. Okay, first we have the division of Himalayas as Trans, Great, Mid, and Outer Himalayas. Now, the Trans-Himalayas is itself divided into the Karakoram range, the Ladakh range, the Zaskar range, and the Kailash range. So let's have a look. So once again, we have the whole of Himalayas, okay, Trans, Great, Mid, and Outer. And the Trans-Himalayas is divided into the Karakoram range, the Ladakh range, the Zaskar range, and the Kailash range, right? So essentially, we are interested in this part, Trans-Himalayas, and the most important topic at this point, that is the Kailash range. We are essentially interested in the Kailash range, okay? Once again, that's the Himalayas. The Himalayas are divided into four parts. The Trans-Himalayas, which is at the northern part. Then we have the Great Himalayas, where we can find the Mount Everest. Then we can find the Mid Himalayas, and finally at the last, the Outer Himalayas. Trans-Himalayas is divided into four parts: the Karakoram range, the Ladakh range, Zaskar range, and the Kailash range, right? So let's have a look into the Trans-Himalayas first. Okay, Karakoram, Ladakh, Zaskar, and the Kailash range. So as you can see, this is the Trans-Himalayas, right? It covers Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and China. This is the whole of the Trans-Himalayas. Now, at the very corner, you can see some parts of Himalayas there. That is also Trans-Himalayas at the very corner. If you can't see, then it's okay. Fine. Now, let's see the divisions of the Trans-Himalayas. So, this is how it looks like. Okay. First, we have at the very top, the Karakoram range. Then, we have the Ladakh range. Then, we have the Zaskar range. And finally, there is a tail called as the Kailash range. Okay. The Karakoram range, Ladakh range, Zaskar range, and the Kailash range. We are interested in this topic, the Kailash range, right? So, now remember this, Kailash range is essentially located in Tibet. Kailash range is not part of India, okay? Kailash range is now located in Tibet, which is now known as China. China has conquered Tibet or annexed or invaded Tibet. So we have the Karakoram range, which parts of it lies in India, okay? Then we have Ladakh range, parts of it lies in India. The Zaskar range, also parts of it lies in India. However, the Kailash range is located entirely in Tibet. Remember that, okay? So if a question arises, something like that, out of the given choices, which one of the ranges is not located in India? Which one of the Trans-Himalayan ranges is not located in India? You have Karakoram, Ladakh, Zaskar, and Kailash. The answer is the Kailash range, right? Hopefully, you don't get screwed over this question. Okay, so moving on. Now, what we are going to do here is we are going to just focus on the Kailash range. Now, there is an important thing you have to know, okay? Now, there's a reason that I have connected the Ladakh range with the Kailash range, okay? The reason is essentially the Kailash range and Ladakh range are basically the same thing. However, there is a gap in between, and that is why many geologists consider Kailash range as different. But technically, Kailash range and Ladakh range are basically the same thing. Let's say Ladakh range is the head, Kailash range is the tail, right? So that is why I'm going to remove the rest of the ranges, okay? Okay, as you can see, Ladakh and the Kailash range are basically the same thing, head and tails, okay? Now we are only interested in the Kailash range. Okay, so essentially to give you a perspective, this is how it looks like. Ladakh range pretty much is located in India. However, if you look closely, Kailash range is essentially entirely in Tibet, right? So let's go deep. Now remember this, kids. Kailash range has three megastructures here. The first one is the Kailash mountain. The second thing is Rakshastal Lake. And the third thing is Mansarovar Lake. Okay, Kailash, Rakshastal and Mansarovar Lake. So these are the three structures located in the Kailash range. Now remember this, Kailash range and Kailash mountain are basically two different things. Kailash mountain is one single structure located in Kailash range. Okay, let's say Kailash range has like 100 mountains in that particular range. Kailash mountain is just one of that particular mountain, right? So we are going to focus on the Kailash mountain. Okay, so as you can see, this is where the Kailash mountain is located. Just look close into the corner. That's the whole of the Kailash range, and then you have the Kailash mountain, right? You can see it. You can see it well. So let's focus on the Kailash mountain. Okay, Kailash mountain is located in Kailash range. Easy to understand. So this is how it looks like. This is the Kailash range and that's the Kailash mountain. Okay, I think you have understood the whole concept, the difference between the Kailash range and the Kailash mountain. Okay, now remember this, Kailash mountain is not the highest mountain in the Kailash range. I repeat this again, Kailash mountain is not the highest mountain in Kailash range. The highest mountain is something else. Okay, its name is Lunpo Gangri. Okay, the highest mountain in Kailash range is Lunpo Gangri. Okay, so this is the difference in height between Lunpo Gangri and Kailash. Okay, this is the Mount Kailash that we all know. Okay, pretty much everyone in India knows about Mount Kailash, right? This is Lunpo Gangri. Lunpo Gangri is 7,095 meters. However, Kailash range is 6,638 meters. Okay, there is a significant difference in the height levels between Lunpo Gangri and Kailash. However, despite Lunpo Gangri being the tallest in the Kailash range, okay, Kailash range has the star that is the Kailash mountain. Kailash mountain is the brightest star in that particular range. Kailash mountain is the famous one, not Lunpo Gangri. Okay, for example, Himalayas, in the Himalayas, the most important mountain is the Mount Everest, right? However, in the Kailash range, Kailash mountain is the most famous one. Okay, despite Lunpo Gangri being the tallest, Kailash range, in the Kailash range, Kailash mountain is the most famous one. Okay, now we will see the reason why Kailash mountain is more famous than Lunpo Gangri. Okay, you will understand by the end of the video. Now let's focus more on the Kailash range. Okay, I'm sorry, Kailash mountain. So this is the structure, Kailash mountain. Now essentially most of the Indians know that, this place, Kailash mountain, is the home or abode of Lord Shiva and his queen Parvati. Right? His whole family resides here. That's the legend, that's the myth that we are going with. Okay, now this particular region, the Kailash mountain, is quite, sacred for many religions. Okay, so that's Lord Shiva and his wife, Queen Parvati. Okay, so they both reside here in Mount Kailash, and that's the height. Now, interesting thing that you have to know is Mount Kailash can be seen from India. Okay, from some specific parts it can be seen from India despite this mountain not being located in India. Now when we look into that particular mountain, we can see it as a kind of a crystal. The word crystal in Hindi or Sanskrit means Kailash, and that is why this particular mountain is named after the crystal. Okay, Kailash. Right, moving on. So obviously, since it is located in Tibet, it's given a different name. We Indians know it as Mount Kailash, but the Tibetans called it as Gang Rinpoche. Okay, Gang Rinpoche. Now, there are a few more interesting things that you can know of. For instance, this particular region, okay, Mount Kailash, is the source of many different rivers. As you can see, the Indus River rises from this region, somewhere near to Kailash range or Kailash mountain. The Satluj River also starts from this part. The Brahmaputra, one of the major tributary of Brahmaputra, which is known as Yarlung Sangpo, also starts from this range. Then we have Karnali River, which is a major tributary of the Ganga, also starts from here. Essentially, all these rivers start from this particular region, and that is why Kailash mountain is more prominent than the tallest mountain in Kailash range. Right? Just type what is the tallest mountain in Kailash range. Just type. Okay. So that's the Kailash mountain. In the Kailash range, you have the Indus River, you have the Satluj River, you have the Karnali River, and you have Yarlung Sampo, which is the Brahmaputra's tributary. So big rivers originate from this particular place. We will look into detail how they or where they originate. Furthermore, there are two important lakes in this region. One is the Mansarovar Lake. Pretty much every Indian know about the Mansarovar Lake. And the second one is the Rakshastal Lake. Two important lakes. We will discuss about them later. Okay. So moving on. Okay. So now remember this. Kailash range only is the only mountain. Okay. Kailash mountain is the only mountain in this world which is not climbed upon. Okay. So many people have tried but failed. Okay. And now in 2001, the Chinese government, they made a prize, let's say, and asked many foreign mountaineers to climb this particular mountain. They asked many foreign mountaineers to climb this mountain. Okay. One of them was Reinhold Messner. This guy is a very famous mountaineer. He has scaled many mountains. But this guy straight away told the Chinese government that he's not going to climb this mountain. The reason is very simple. He doesn't want to offend the souls of many Indians, many Tibetans, many Buddhists, because this particular mountain in Kailash range is one of the most sacred mountains in the entire world. So this guy didn't want to offend a lot of people, and that is why he straight away said no, he's not going to scale up this mountain. The Chinese government later banned the entry or banned the scaling up of this mountain for some reason, but many people should respect that. Right? Despite China being a communist country, despite most of the people there atheists, they simply banned the scaling up or the climbing up on this mountain. Okay? They recognized the feelings of many of the religions, despite them being atheists. Right? Now, we are interested in knowing that this particular region, as I mentioned, is quite important for not just Hindus. Okay, it's important for Buddhists, it's important for Jains, and it's important for Bon. Now remember, Bon religion is basically Buddhism in Tibet. Okay, Bon religion is basically Buddhism in Tibet. So essentially, remember this particular region, not just Mount Kailash, but also the two important lakes, that is the Mansarovar Lake and the lake Rakshastal. As you can see, there are two lakes. This particular region that's covering the Mount Kailash and the lakes is important for Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, as well as Bon religion. So clearly now you can easily locate where Mount Kailash is and where the lake Rakshastal and lake Mansarovar is. Okay. If you are not able to process lake Rakshastal or lake Mansarovar, I will help you. Okay. So let's focus on lake Rakshastal and lake Mansarovar. So as I mentioned, the Kailash range is divided or not divided. We are going to discuss about three structures located in Kailash range. First one we have discussed is the Kailash mountain. The second one is Rakshastal Lake, and the third one will be Mansarovar Lake. Let's discuss about the Rakshastal Lake, right? So let's go to Tibet. So this is Mount Kailash, and that's the whole Kailash range. And there you can find there two lakes. One of them is Rakshastal Lake and the second one is the Mansarovar Lake. At this point, we are interested only in the Rakshastal Lake, right? Now remember this, these two lakes have very different symmetries. Rakshastal Lake is entirely made up of salt, while the Mansarovar Lake, which is located at the adjacent or next to it, is completely fresh water. There is no detailed scientific explanation why this happens. Why Rakshastal Lake is made up of salt. However, why, despite being close or despite being adjacent to Rakshastal Lake, Lake Mansarovar is fresh water. No one really have understood this mechanism. Anyway, so that's Mount Kailash and that's Rakshastal Lake, right? And Rakshastal Lake is saltwater lake. Remember that. Now remember, this is how the geometry looks like. As you can see, that's India and that's the Tibet plateau, right? And that's the Rakshastal Lake and that's the Mount Kailash. Now it is a very high altitude lake. It's located around 4.5 kilometers above sea level. So it's one of the highest altitude lakes in the region. Okay, so that's pretty important. Rakshastal Lake is located at very high altitude, very high. It's located very high at quite a distance, 4.5 kilometers above sea level, quite a distance, right? Now, important things that you have to know is that according to the myths or according to the legends, why Rakshastal is a saltwater lake. This is because obviously you are familiar with Lord, let's say Ravana. Okay, you know the story of Lord Rama and Sita. You obviously know about Ravana. Okay, so he made, an offering to Lord Shiva that he must give him immortality in exchange for something. Or he mediated a lot in this particular region around Lake Rakshastal. And that is why, to this date, this lake has become salt water. Earlier it was fresh water, but now it has become salt water. That's the myth that we are going to go with, because the science can't explain at this point what's the reason why this particular lake is salt water. Ravana mediated to Lord Shiva around this lake. Right? Now moving on. Now this particular lake is as usual formed by the glacial activity. As you can see, the ice has melted and it is pouring in to this particular lake. But despite this, no one knows why it's salt water. Right? It's because of the glacial activity. This particular lake was formed because there was a shallow structure already there, and most of the glaciers, when they melted into water, they just filled up this particular lake. Okay, so that became Rakshastal Lake. Now moving on, we see the Satluj River. It originates from this particular lake, right? The river Satluj originates around or from this particular lake. Right? Now to give you a perspective, I'm just going to show you the entire navigation part of Satluj. So this is how river Satluj looks like. Okay, and as you can see, this is how river Satluj look like. Okay, first it starts around Lake Rakshastal, it goes into India, and eventually it falls into the Indus River. Okay, that's Satluj, right? Okay, that's river Satluj. Moving on. So as you can see, these are the two lakes. Once it is the Rakshastal Lake and the second one is the Mansarovar Lake. Now there is a small stream called as Gangachu which actually connects the Rakshastal Lake as well as the Mansarovar Lake. Okay, Gangachu which connects the Rakshastal Lake and the Mansarovar Lake. Quite an important fact. Okay, this is a very short river and it's not exactly perennial. Okay, however, it connects Rakshastal Lake and the Mansarovar Lake. All right. Now moving on to the third part, that is the Mansarovar Lake. Okay, we have discussed the Kailash mountain, we have discussed the Rakshastal Lake. Now we are going to focus on the Mansarovar Lake. So this particular lake you have pretty much known, because since you are an Indian, you already know about Kailash mountain and the Mansarovar Lake, right? Let's discuss few more important things. So Mansarovar Lake is a freshwater lake. However, Rakshastal Lake is a saltwater lake. That's the difference. Okay, despite being adjacent to each other, despite being the same region, one of them is a saltwater lake, one of them is a freshwater lake. Science is not able to explain this. Now it is connected to the Rakshastal Lake by a channel or by a stream called as Gangachu, or by a river called as Gangachu. Right? Now, like Rakshastal Lake, it's located around 4.5 kilometers above the sea level. Okay, so that's the Mansarovar Lake, and the yellow structure is the Tibetan plateau, right? So as you can see, Satluj starts from Lake Rakshastal. Okay, as you can see, that's the whole of the Kailash range, that's the Kailash mountain, and as you can see, there's a small tributary of Indus that's going in. Okay, so that's where the Indus River starts. So that's Indus River. Okay, now what we are going to show you, okay, so that's the Indus River. Okay, and let me show you the entire stretch, how the Indus River starts from Mansarovar and goes through India and then into Pakistan. So this is how it looks like. So that's the Kailash range. Okay, and as you can see, that's the Indus River. Okay, so that's the Indus River. Satluj also falls into Indus. They both rise from the same place. Satluj and Indus, they both rise from the same place, and after traveling like thousands of kilometers, they actually merge back in Pakistan. They start from China, Tibet, and they go through India and merge in Pakistan. So the question is, why bother doing this? If they had to merge, they just could have merged in China itself, right? Why go through all these and merge in Pakistan? Apparently, nature likes it that way. All right, so we have, there's an important thing to discuss. As you can see, that's the area where the Indus Valley civilization flourished. Okay, that's the area in yellow where the Indus Valley civilization flourished. Okay, now this is going to come in handy because there's a small concept that I have to discuss with you with regards to history. So that's where the Indus civilization was located. And as you can see, that's the Saraswati River. Okay, that's the Saraswati River. Okay, now the Saraswati River does not exist. Okay, Indus River exists, the Satluj River exists, the Saraswati River does not exist. But back 2000 years ago, it existed. Right, now there are some more rivers that you have to understand. So as you can see, there are some more rivers that you will learn later, or if you know, you already know some of these rivers. These are the Ravi River, the Bas River, the Bias River, Chambal, and all those stuff. So the point is when the Rigvedic Aryans came to this region, they actually prospered in this particular area. Okay, this particular area was known as the region of Sapta Sindhu. Okay, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there are like 7 rivers. Sapta Sindhu, Sindhu means river, Sapta means 7. This region was the region where the Rigvedic Aryans prospered. First, the Indus River. Okay, you are already familiar with the Indus River. That's where the Indus Valley civilization flourished. Okay, this is where the Indus Valley civilization flourished. Okay, this is where the Indus Valley civilization flourished. Later, in the Sapta Sindhu region, okay, in the Sapta Sindhu region, the Rigvedic Aryans flourished. Okay, so as you can see, we are slowly moving towards the east. Okay, now let's once again go back to the system, the Kailash range and all. Okay, now once again, there is an important river that's going to originate from here. Okay, and this river is known as Yarlan Sangpo, which is an important tributary of Brahmaputra river. So it also rises from this particular region, that is the Mansarovar Lake. Okay, Brahmaputra river and the Indus River actually starts from this particular region, that is the Mansarovar Lake. Okay, so this is how the Brahmaputra river looks like. Okay, so this is the Brahmaputra river. Okay, this is the Brahmaputra river. The entire Brahmaputra river you can see. You can see all these start from that particular region. That's pretty interesting, right? I don't know how nature does all these things. Beautiful. It starts from there, and you know, it's the cause of so many civilizations. The Indus River, the Ganga River, the Brahmaputra River, all these rivers have the origin here, and it is the reason why we Indians exist. Right? So, there's another important river that we have to discuss, which again rises from here only. Okay, there is another important river called as River Karnali. Okay, so this is the River Karnali. Okay, it rises from here. Okay, River Karnali rises from here. This happens to be a major tributary of River Ganga. Okay, River Karnali rises from the same region. Okay, Lake Rakshastal, and this happens to be a major tributary of Ganga. So this is how it looks like. So this is River Karnali River. Okay, as you can see, that's the River Karnali. Okay, and this is Ganga. Okay, this is Ganga River. Awesome. So once again, let's go into the past. As you can see, this region, okay, mentioned in green, is the region where the Mahajanapadas flourished, or let's say where the Mauryan kingdoms flourished, right? So as you can see, the whole of Ganga and Karnali river is populated by many different kingdoms, which eventually became empires. So first in yellow, that is the Indus River, led to the start of Indus Valley civilization. Then came the region in between called as the Sapta Sindhu, which prospered, which helped Rigvedic Aryans to prosper. Then moving towards the east, in green you have the later Mahajanapadas and the great Mauryan kingdoms. So this particular area flourished by the Indus River, the Satluj River, the Ganga River. All these were quite important for history.